Welcome to SBME Interfaces. Our goal with this show is to introduce you to the people that interface with biomedical engineering, from students and faculty to staff and industry, and everyone in between. BME is a broad field that encompasses so many different perspectives, journeys, skill sets, and backgrounds, and we are excited to share them all with you.
Today we're interfacing with Roger, Tam, and Tanya Bennet. Roger is an associate professor in the School of Biomedical Engineering, Department of Radiology. He directs the Engineers and Scrubs program, and his research interests are centered on the application of computer vision and machine learning methods to quantify analysis of medical images. He's a UBC trained and bred individual, having done all his degrees here in computer science. Welcome, Roger. Uh, Tanya is a PhD candidate in biomedical engineering under the supervision of Karen Chung. Her research focuses on developing and validating microfluidic organ on a chip platform that recapitulates the human airways for study of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. She's has been involved in different capacities for EIS over the past 3 years, first as a member and then as a teaching assistant. And she's passionate about biomedical engineering, medical technology innovation, as it aims to bridge the gap between medicine and engineering to better the standard of care. Welcome, Tanya.
Right. So for the both of you, I'd like to sort of start with these last strange 15 months that we've had. It's had profound impacts on a lot of people, a lot of systems, a lot of processes. So how has it impacted the both of you? And we can start with Tanya.
Yeah, it's definitely had a huge impact. I do a lot of wet lab stuff in my own research. And so at the beginning of COVID, that was kind of halted. I was kicked out of the lab for safety. But I did have a lot of interface with sort of, I guess, like the medical world through some of the networks that had been established through Engineers and Scrubs. And Roger actually brought forth this opportunity through the McGill University to develop ventilators for the shortage. And so myself, along with 7 UBC current and alum students, set forth and adapted a BiPAP machine to work as a ventilator. And so we went along through the competition and actually came top 10. But for us, the more focus was really trying to get it into the hands of the clinicians and really help. And I also worked on the UBC COVID support team, making PPE for different hospitals, as well as pretty much just being an engineer available for anything that doctors or clinicians needed. So for me, it was both, I guess, halting and also really expanding and just seeing how quick things had to change when we kind of got presented with this really harsh scenario.
What about you, Roger?
Well, let's speak about EIS because I think that's where it had a lot of impact, and it was both positive and negative. Certainly on the negative side, I mean, we didn't get to meet our students in person, and normally, having that personal contact is very important just to get to know students. So it definitely affected the whole team formation process. So the students are supposed to form their own teams, based on various different strengths and weaknesses and capabilities, and not being able to meet in person certainly affected that a lot. And of course the physical prototyping was greatly impacted by not being able to do things in person. However, on the positive side, we switched from physical tours to virtual seminars, and Tanya did a fantastic job setting up a number of seminars and having guests that would not normally not be able to attend just because of geographic distance. And some of them were so well received that we're planning to include them for this year, even though we're expected to be back to in-person teaching. One highlight of remote collaborations was that we were able to engage some experts from Uganda in one of our sessions, and talking to them directly. It was really a wonderful experience for us and the students.
It's great. So, Roger, taking a bit back, what led you to a career in academia?
Oh, yeah. So I've always been academically minded. I love research, but in the end, what really drew me in is that I really like working with students. And the older I got, the more this has become a driving force. I love having some degree of impact on how a person's career turns out. That would be the biggest motivation for me.
Tanya, what led you to pursue a PhD in biomedical engineering specifically?
Yeah, I have a really unique graduate experience. So I actually started as a Master's of Engineering student. I knew that I wanted to sort of dive a little deeper into biomedical engineering since my background was in integrated engineering, and I kind of made my own degree where I had a major in biomechanics and then a double minor in bioprocess engineering and biomaterials. But I wanted to really dive a little bit deeper into the clinical space. And during my internship for the MEng program, I started working in Dr. Tang's lab and started working on a project with St. Paul's, and just really like dove into it. And I didn't think that, the time span for the internship was long enough for me to kind of develop and see the project end. And that was a really big thing for me. I didn't want to like walk away when it wasn't final. So I did the switch from MEng to MESC. And then about a year and a half after starting the project, I kind of came up with a few novel ideas to sort of expand it even further and got the opportunity to transfer into the PhD program. So that was 3 years ago. And yeah, I kind of just didn't look back. And so I kind of say like I kind of stumbled into my PhD, which might not be the same experience a lot of other people had. I knew that I wanted to continue learning, but I didn't necessarily know that like pure academia was what I wanted to do. I was going to learn whether I was in a classroom setting, in a lab setting, or in industry. I just was really interested in like learning about the space and trying to improve my skill set so that I could make an impact on whatever project I was on.
Great. Roger, can you expand a bit more, on your role as director of the Engineers and Scrubs program?
Sure. I've been involved in EIS since the very beginning. As you know, Tony Hodgson founded the program in 2010, and my department had actually told me I needed to do more teaching. So I reached out to Tony and said, "We're starting this new program. Why don't you join me as a co-instructor?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't know too much about medical device design to be honest at the beginning, and but Tony taught me a lot, and I learned a lot, and through the years, and then it was Dave Wilson who was director for a few years, and then about 2.5 years ago I took over as director, and part of that was because of a new sponsorship partnership that we have with the Praxis Spinal Cord Institute. So as part of that, it was a good opportunity for us to revamp the program and align it with some of the new initiatives for the school, some of the new directions for the school, and so that's when I came on board, and that's where we're heading with the program right now is to really create more impact. So we've introduced elements of entrepreneurship, and we're providing a lot of after course support for teams who want to continue their projects, whether it's for clinical deployment or for commercialization. Anything the students want to do to create impact out of their projects.
Tanya, what's been your experience in the program? Like, what have been some of your big takeaways? Your big wins, your challenges, opportunities, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's been so much that I've learned by both being, a part of the cohort first and then sort of transitioning into the teaching staff. I think the biggest thing that I realized through like the whole process is just the lack of communication that does exist between the medical industry and the people that have the skills to be able to build what they need to do. So one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about medicine is like, I mean, there's definitely some new and really, novel things that are coming about, but it is quite old school. There's a lot of things that haven't changed since the 70s. And a lot of that exists because it's kind of like people are stuck in their ways, or they don't think that there is this easy process of making, improvements to the quality of care. And so learning that, like, honestly, if you just get people who will communicate in the same room, you can get a lot of things out of that. But also too, that like engineers and clinicians, or even like people who work in biotech, they speak different languages. So it's really not only a matter of like starting the conversation, but having people that have kind of the vocabulary or the ability to like articulate or converse with all the different groups. I've definitely been in a room before where, somebody has this idea, they just don't know how to articulate it to somebody who's going to make it.
Yeah.
And that's really where like struggles happen. And then the other thing that I think I've just learned is that, like, honestly, until you start making things, you don't know what, like, not even what the right solution is, but just what the problem actually is. Like, we have an incredible guest every year who comes and talks about his experience in like medical technology. And the first thing that he says all the time is like, you need to learn to fail fast. And the reality is like, you're gonna fail. He always talks about some of like his biggest failures and like how they spent millions of dollars to build these technologies to find out that they could have built something for, a tenth of the cost, and it would have taken them a year instead of 10 years and all of these things. And until you start building stuff and having those conversations, you could spend a lifetime building something that will never get used. So that's probably the few big learning things that I've gotten out of being a part of EIS from both the student perspective and the teaching perspective.
Do you think you've been able to change any minds, any of those old mindsets that are, holdovers from the 70s going through this process?
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a lot of people who have come in who have maybe thought, oh, you can't improve that, or, oh, this works best. And I always, like, even when I work in my own research talking to biologists, I always ask, well, why? Like, why do you do that? Or why is that your standard or your gold standard and things like that? And just having those conversations. And like when somebody actually has to explain why they do something, they start realizing that maybe it's not the best way of doing it. And it's just because no one's questioned it before. No one's asked them to explain why they do it. And so, yeah, I've definitely seen some maybe people who were like stuck in their ways be more open to new or emerging things. And like also too, just like bringing up the idea of like, technology doesn't have to mean your life is harder. In fact, like it can make your life, whether it's like from a data mining perspective or patient care or anything, like it can make your life easier, and it doesn't actually have to be that complicated. I think that's a misperception that happens a lot, is that like as you put in technology, that you have all of these new things that you have to learn, which you have to learn some new things, but it's like fairly straightforward. And like the whole idea of good tech is good user interface. So like that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize.
So this question is for both of you, and we'll start with Roger first. Roger, what excites you about the School of Biomedical Engineering?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. If I had to put it in one word, it's opportunity, right? There are so many different directions that you can go with it, and I was talking to a prospective master's student this morning, and she asked me, what can you do after with a degree from the school, and it's more of a question of what can't you do, right? It doesn't, the school doesn't really slot you into a fixed path like a lot of traditional engineering schools will. It's broad, but it has direction as well. We have the stream, so there's guidance there. But yeah, what really excites me is the fact that you can work in your own area, but still be exposed to a lot of different things, and really stimulates your imagination as to what is possible with technology. I would say that's most exciting for me.
It's great. And you, Tanya?
Yeah, I think mine would be very similar. Opportunity and like diversity that exists within the school. I always love the idea that like even as you become like super educated, that there's been multiple times where I've been in a room with various people where I don't know what they're necessarily talking about, and I have to go back and like figure out what their research entails, or like something that maybe I wasn't exposed to in my own schooling. The other thing that I think is really unique about like UBC's School of Biomedical Engineering is BC has an incredible biotech and medical technology industry. And the School of Biomedical Engineering is really doing everything that they can to like bring industry into the program and be a part of it, whether it's like seminars, having just like co-op positions that are available, just general like conversations. You get exposed to so many different people who not only work in the industry, but work locally, which is so big for anybody that's going to be looking for a job after finish. And I think, like, as Roger said, there's direction, but there's the diversity. Like, if you are somebody who likes tissue engineering, there's going to be something for you. If you're somebody who likes maybe more traditional, like medical device development, there's like an avenue for you. But at the same time, the base skills and the base knowledge that both individuals are learning means that if 5 years from now they decide that that industry is not what they want to do, they have the ability to pivot and go into something that, you know, is classified as biomedical engineering, but it's not necessarily something that they've been doing for the last 5 years. And so that's something that I really like about it.
That's interesting. I think it's a huge feature of the program that we have all of this optionality, right? And I've seen a few people freeze when faced with that much optionality, but I really do think, like, if we can instill in people that idea, like, this is a huge opportunity for you that is basically limitless. I think we can go far with that. On that front, this is a question for both of you. As the Engineers and Scrubs program fits into this whole thing where, you know, we're bringing industry and we're bringing clinicians in and we're creating all these partnerships, where do the both of you hope to see the EIS program go next? And we can start with you, Roger.
Sure. We're actively trying to integrate the program with the local, you know, medical innovation ecosystem, right? So we want to be at the center of it. We want to be at the point where anybody has an opportunity or a question or a clinical need that they want a partner to work with to come to us, right? And that's already happening quite naturally, you know, whenever you know, there's a clinician who has a problem that they want an engineer to work on. We're often the first point of contact, or, you know, the problem eventually makes its way to us just because, you know, we're connected with a lot of the people, right? And I think being part of that network and being in the center of that hub really will benefit our program and our students in particular, right? In terms of learning opportunities, internships, you know, learning what is important to industry, and of course, job opportunities afterwards, right? So I think that's where I see the program going.
And Tanya, what would you like to see the program be doing next?
Yeah, I think for me, a big thing, and we are definitely going that direction, is sort of transitioning from it being like, okay, it's a course that students take as they come in, but actually being a part of the pipeline of medical technology. And we might not necessarily have the same cohort every single year, but we do have projects that are continuing on, whether it's with a small group that's now started, a startup company, or if it's across being, taken to that next phase, and integrating in more of the entrepreneurship side of things, where it's like the business development, moving from like minimal viable prototype into production and into actually being able to have it go through, CSA or FDA approval, have something go through manufacturing and like all of that. So that we're not just creating these ideas, but we're actually creating solutions.
It's getting a bit specific on the research that you both do. Roger, I'll start with you and maybe I can take the next question from Tanya. Can you just at a high level talk about the research that your lab does and some of its potential clinical impact it can have?
Sure. So most of my research is centered around machine learning and particularly in image analysis. So a lot of it is the high level idea is taking a large number of images and trying to use machine learning to perform clinical prediction by extracting features that would be difficult for humans to pick out. Some of it is very subtle. Some of it would take many images to be able to see that pattern. That's where computers really excel, right? So that's the crux of my research, and I do that in different areas, in brain, in COPD, in heart as well.
Great, thanks.
And Tanya, what's like a really cool aspect of your PhD work and the potential impact it has on the future?
Yeah, so as sort of mentioned, I'm designing and validating a model of essentially the human bronchioles for COPD research. And I think one of the really kind of, cool aspects is that it's bringing in a lot of fields that exist but haven't necessarily been incorporated into the technology. Organ on a chip has been this expansion within drug screening or disease modeling, but it doesn't necessarily use a lot of the sort of already well-established things from other industries, like the biomaterials industry that's around for so many years, or even the 3D printing side. So I'm looking to incorporate things that already exist in their own individual industries and put them together to really further the model that we have, since like there's this idea that when we work in the in vitro space, we have to simplify it so much to make sure that the data is clean. But now with all of this improvement in how we're processing data, you can increase complexity, and by increasing the complexity, the hope is that we increase the predictability of these models and the tools that we have access to. And so that's kind of what I think is really cool about my particular research.
Mm-hmm.
I always get excited when we talk to our trainees and students. No offense, Roger, and faculty, but the passion that they have, and it's because of faculty like Roger for sure, and Karen and so forth. So we're going to pivot again, a couple of lighthearted questions, and then we go around this up. So I'll start with Roger, and then I'll ask you this as well, Tanya. Roger, I'm sure you're super busy. What do you do to unwind and recharge?
Oh, geez. Yeah, it's a problem when you have to pause and think about it, right?
Yeah.
Really, my kids, right? That's I think that's probably the same for you. They make me forget about work, which is great, right? And often they don't even give me a choice. Right. So
that's right.
So so I greatly enjoy that, and it's really for me it's time spent with family. That's my biggest stress reliever.
You, Tanya?
Yeah, so the people that know me know that I play competitive rugby, and so when I'm not in the lab, I'm probably either on the pitch or at some form of training. And I've been really lucky to play on traveling teams as well. So I've gotten to travel to Dubai and England, Australia. So that's kind of one of the things that I do to relax. It's a great anger management thing too. Like, releases everything. It's an incredible community. So even though I'm not originally from BC, I have so many friends because of the rugby community, both starting as a varsity athlete at UBC, but now expanding into the local rugby community here.
Do you play rugby sevens or yes?
So 15s and sevens. They're
15s,
slightly different. Most of the international touring that I've done has been with a sevens team. But the local club that I play for, which is the Marilomas, they're a 15s team.
When the sevens landed in the Olympics, that was my new favorite thing. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, that was their first exposure to it, and I think it was one of the most watched sporting events in the Olympics. And it's also, like, for Canada, it's great to know because our women's sevens team actually got the bronze medal, and they are incredible. They are one of the top 5 teams in the world. So it's really nice to see the expansion there. And it's a fairly small community. So a lot of the girls that play for the Canadian team, as well as play for some of the other international teams, I actually know because I've either played with them or grew up with them, since I've been playing for 15 years now.
Nice.
So definitely been in it for a while.
I love it. Okay, so one more quick personal question, and then we'll do the last one to bring us home here. So, for the both of you, if you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be? We'll start with Roger.
Don't worry too much about where your career is going to go. Have confidence in yourself. Find something that you're good at that is going to be in demand, and just go for it. Yeah. Don't stress out too much about exactly how you're going to get there.
I like it. And Tanya?
Yeah, I think mine would be like, don't worry so much about the things that you don't know, because that feeling doesn't go away. You always won't know certain things, and it's actually a good thing. Like, no one wants to be the smartest person in a room or like know everything, because then it just gets boring.
Absolutely. Okay, so last question then for the both of you. Are there any initiatives or projects or endeavors that you're overseeing right now? It can be personal, can be professional, that you are really excited about and you want us to get excited about too? We'll start with Tanya.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for the incoming cohort for EIS. I think what we learned through sort of switching to seminars and having the sort of remote learning has created a lot of expansion within the program. So the students are going to get a lot more experience into a very wide variety of sort of the medical space. So I'm really excited about that, since I get to play an active role in structuring those seminars and those tours.
And Roger?
Since Tanya's already talked about EIS, I'm very, very excited about that as well. But I'll give this other project a plug, which is a new project. It's part of what they call a supercluster project that the UBC is involved in with a local company called 1Qubit, centered around AI and radiology. And of course, the school is involved in that. It's going to be, over the next couple of years, really expand to be a really big project. And the company's planning to hire like crazy, and they also have quite a few internships available. So for students who are into AI and medical imaging, they're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Great, thank you so much, both. Pleasure talking to you. And EIS is truly a unique aspect of the school, and as you mentioned, Raj, thanks to Tony for starting it, and people like yourselves carrying the torch forward. I think it's going to make huge impacts in the ecosystem. So all the best, and see you soon.
Okay, thanks very much for having me.
Thank you.